Good afternoon. Actually, it's still morning. Sorry. Good morning. My name is Pious Asante, and I am going to flip the script. Why am I going to flip the script? I'm going to talk about the part of the value chain where majority of the role played is significantly women. I'm again going to flip the script because I am going to talk about beyond what we've been hearing this morning. Because what we've been hearing this morning is majority Ghana related, and I'm going to bring us to the sub-region. But before that, just a bit of clarification. I just wanted to say, I'm sure most of us know about FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations, leading the efforts on eliminating hunger and food insecurity. The three main goals of the organization is to eradicate hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition, eliminate poverty through agriculture, and driving forward of economic and social progress, and also sustainable management and utilization of natural resources, which fisheries is a key part of the natural resource. FAO is a knowledge-based organization, and at the moment, the work is driven by the strategic framework. For us, we call it the four betters, but I'm going to spare you the boredom of going into what the four betters is. But the strategic framework of FAO directly aligns to the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we want to achieve that through going through a more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food systems, not just in Ghana, not just in West Africa, but globally. This vision, particularly for the fishery sector in FAO, is guided by the Blue Transformation Policy. And the whole vision of this Blue Transformation Policy is for a vision for a more sustainable, productive, equitable, and impactful sector. How do we do that? We have three objectives, but again, I'm going to spare you the boredom of these three objectives. But the outcome, which I want you to pay attention to, is for the first objective, the outcome is for sustainable agriculture production, and that we grow it by at least 35% by 2030. And also, 100% marine and inland fisheries is under effective management, and what we've been talking about this morning is eradicated. And lastly, the outcome for objective number 3 is that loss and waste is halved because, again, we know that a number of the catch we bring in, due to limited technology, due to inefficiencies, we lose them. So we need to work to reduce these wastes and losses by 2030. So FAO, this transmission is not just for FAO's vision only, because FAO is a member-based organization. So we work with the member countries, we work with regional and fisheries organizations, partners, private sector, and civil society organizations. So we believe that the vision for the blue economy and blue transformation is a shared effort. And as FAO's role, we believe that we also play the role of a convening body, bringing together all these partners in order to achieve the blue transformation policy by 2030. Now, to why I've taken this podium this morning, advancing women's participation in small-scale fisheries in West Africa, but anchoring it exactly on the organization's voluntary guideline on small-scale fisheries. So, before that, Dr. Abraham gave insights on Ghana, the number of women's participation, but I'm going to make it a bit broader for West Africa. And for me, I believe that, and in FAO as well, we believe that West Africa's small-scale fisheries is crucial for food security because fish on the plate of the young, the old, the infants is key. Gives different nutritional benefits for the family, for nursing mothers, for lactating mothers, for pregnant women, for the aged. And then also, the work that is mostly done in West Africa, majority of the work in the fisheries value chain is a role that is played by women. And they represent 50% of the workforce. And they are found also, particularly after the catch is brought in, and as well as marketing. But given this 50% of representation doing 80% of the work, this work, to a larger extent, is highly under-recognized and undervalued. Why is the case? That is why FAO believe that the small scales voluntary guideline, which is, in a way, giving the rights to the key players of the value chain, helps to address these issues. The voluntary guideline, to give you a bit of a background, was endorsed by the Conference of Fisheries in 2014. Yes, it's a global instrument. And then we believe also that, and we know that this is the very first internationally agreed framework that has explicit gender sections and gender considerations. And so we believe it is the tool, it is the guideline to drive the agenda of women's economic empowerment in the fisheries sector, in the world, in Africa, in West Africa, and then in Ghana. It emphasizes on human rights, equity, sustainability, and then gender equality. Equality, which we believe is needed for all, because, again, these are the individuals playing 80% or doing 80% of the work in the sector. So why am I focusing on gender instead of focusing on voluntary guidelines? We know that 90% of the fishers globally are also in the small-scale fisheries, and half of them are women. They dominate the post-harvest sector, but their roles are invisible. Again, these invisible roles comes as a result of the disparities in access to resources, in access to finance, in access to training, in access to leadership. Are they even invited to the table for discussion? Do they have a say in co-management committees? How many women in the different co-management committees in our communities are the leaders? When the co-management policies were being put together, were they on the table? And that's why I am really happy that I've worked with a number of colleagues in this room to drive that agenda forward for women's participation, which we believe is key, because again, statistics show that they are playing 80% of the role. Particularly for the voluntary guidelines, again, I'm going to narrow in on the gender aspect of it. A cause for the elimination of gender-based discrimination, promotes gender mainstreaming in all small-scale fisheries policies, and then supports access to education, training, technology, leadership, so that the women would be able to have the seat on the table. Because if we are introducing technology, if we are introducing business models, and these trainings are targeted at the wrong group, how do we then achieve the objective of these trainings and this capacity? Again, we believe in FAO that it is really key that once technology is being introduced, once training is being introduced, you bring or you narrow in focusing on the right individuals. Because why would you want to introduce post-harvest technology when you cut the women out? Because, again, when you go to the processing sites, when you go to the processing factories, who has the smoke going? Who is inhaling the smoke? Who is standing under the sun? meaning that it is really important, and that is why it was advocated for to have a particular dedicated chapter in the guideline focusing on gender equality. And even though the chapter on gender equality is one particular, but we need and we have ensured that it cuts across in terms of reference to the different chapters of the voluntary guideline. Again, what is the reality in West Africa? When it comes to marketing, when it comes to the trade, I don't know if as part of this session we would go to the fish market in Ghana, but if you get there, and I'm sure most of us have already even visited different fish markets in different parts of the world. When it comes to fresh fish, which I like very much, I prefer fish to meat, not because I like the fishery sector, but I believe that fish is the best. But you would realize that most of the cleaning, most of the drying, most of the selling is done by these women. And then you would realize that they do these activities with their bare hands. They do these activities with crude tools. One site that I saw, they hit nails on woods and used to scale the fish, to descale the fish. You would realize that even the drying racks that they are using, even the selling that they are using, that they are doing in the market, we have different flies, we have different contaminants all around. This is because, one, they do not have the requisite knowledge. Two, they do not have the requisite technology. Three, they do not have the finance in order to operate under hygienic conditions. And we all know that once the fish is contaminated from the beginning, when it comes to, or when it falls on my plate, when I prepare my dish, it's equally also contaminated. So how do we protect and how do we prevent that? These issues, again, I remember one time a colleague said, but Pious, every time you are talking about tenant rights, every time you are talking about land. And then I say, yes, land is key. Tenant right is key because this is the means for women to acquire or procure a number of things. How do you establish, how do you invest in a processing center yourself as a woman when the land you are going to establish the processing center is not yours? You invest in it, and in a matter of time, the owner wants it back. What do you do with that investment? If you want financial support from banks, how do you assess them when you do not have anything for collateral purposes? If by ways, you get this financial support, how are you going to invest in your business when you do not have a place suited for, one, your customers to even locate you? That's why for me, I believe that in Africa, in West Africa, in Ghana, key limited constraints for women is access to tenant rights, which should be in a way always highlighted, working with government, working with institutions to promote tenant rights for women. Again, poor infrastructure for processing. I've talked enough about this. Exposure to gender-based violence. Fortunately, I worked on a project in Tanzania, transactional sex for fish. Maybe we've heard about it, maybe we've not heard about it. But if you listen to the story of these women engaged in this, it is because, one, they do not have financial muscle to buy directly from fisher folks when they bring in the fish. What do? They offer their body so that they get fish. Some even go as high as marrying these fisher folks so that when they come, they are given the fish and then they sell the fish. Which is, again, one condition in Africa, particularly around the Lake Tanganyika area, in Uganda, in Tanzania, which should actually be looked at because there is a major constraint. It spreads a lot of sexually transmitted diseases. Because these fishermen move from community to community, move from country to country, settle there, and then they carry along different transmitted diseases. One, family abandonment. When these fisher folks up and leave and go spend about 6 months, 1 year in another community, the woman now has to be the head of the household, taking care of the family, taking care of the kids that she had with the fisherman. Again, decision-making spaces. I mentioned the co-management, and so I'm going to skip this. So, to drill down, what are these inequalities that women face? Traditional roles, which is the challenge? Because as a man standing here, talking about gender, and someone asked me the question, why do you think you have earned the right to talk about gender? Is it not women that normally preach gender equality? And then I tell him, yes, I grew up in a really traditional community. I'm Ghanaian. My father is a chief. Now he has just one wife, but at a point he had 4 wives. And these 4 wives, yes, God being so good, my father played the role perfectly. I went to the university, I completed my master's degree, and all. But again, anything I needed, any form of direct contact with family was through my mother. Because when I needed something, my father had other 4 wives. He had other kids that he needed to take care of. So I can't go to him directly. My mother was my spokesperson. Every time when I come back from school, she's in the kitchen. Now, my wife, I am here. I traveled all the way from Senegal to be here. My wife is back home taking care of the family. But if we were to employ someone to do that, to take care of that task of family role or caregiving, you would have to pay the person. And so we have an arrangement in place. We have allocated several costs to different roles that we play at home. Yes, I moved to Senegal. We moved to Senegal because of work, so meaning that my wife had to leave her job and follow me. But is she going to be staying at home? How would she earn income? That is why it is important for us to allocate and take care of the traditional gender roles, but also looking at caregiving and how we quantify the economic benefits that comes with it. I hate to iron. She irons my dresses. But then again, if I was supposed to do it, you see, she chooses what I wear. This morning I said, maybe I don't wear this to present, as you said. She said, no, you have to wear this to present because this is really nice. But then again, that role she is playing, that advisor role, if we had to bring in an advisor from out, a fashion aspect, I'm sure we're going to pay the person. But why do we allow women to play these roles for free? Let me bring it to the context of fisheries. If I am supposed to take my son to kindergarten or my daughter to kindergarten, and I don't have to carry her with me to work, I pay the school, take care of my child. But these women have to also bring their child to the processing centers. The health hazard, let's even put the health hazard by the side. They would be working with the child on their back, but if we provide, as part of our implementation, as part of our activities, if we provide caregiving centers, the women drop their babies there, and then they contribute a quota to running the caregiving house, which is really important because then again, it gives them the freedom to be able to concentrate on the economic work that they are doing and bring food to the table and bring money that is able to take care of the family, to take care of fees, to take care of health emergencies, and other issues like that. Again, unequal power relations. How many men are in this room? How many women? I'm happy my friend here is now the deputy director, but in a lot of instances, that is not the case. I have been to a system working in ministries that chance were not given to able, intelligent women because of cultural associations. A woman cannot lead. These are the power dynamics that comes into play. Women's agency is very key. And then again, their roles are under-recognized, I've mentioned this. Their influence on decision-making, I've mentioned this. But even the vulnerability that is assigned in terms of pay wages or pay gaps in the fishery sector, this is also issues that needs to be addressed. Okay, I've hammered a lot of, disadvantages. Let's look at what has been working so far. The most important thing and the most really convincing activities or actions is women's organization. When women come together and form organizations, when women come together to form associations, it gives them the voice. The voice to push for what is right. The voice to advocate for what they believe is beneficial to them for the work that they're doing. That is why there are a number of women-led associations. There's NAFTA in Ghana. And across Africa, there are a lot of these women associations in different countries. And these women associations helps to push the women agenda at the table. They are represented on different national platforms when it comes to the fishery sector. And these platforms are where the key decisions are discussed. And so for now, actions are coming up, initiatives are coming up that benefits the women particularly. Beach management in Senegal, women are playing key roles. In Sierra Leone, governance, gender-responsive governance, that they are able to engenderize the policies that they are putting in place. The gender desk from Gambia. The whole point of the gender desk is that key people mainstream gender in the different projects from different partners, donors that are coming into the country. Just as a way to enforce the national gender policies that are in these countries. We've worked with Fishnet, CALPA, and these are all regional and national associations. And they played that role perfectly. Now, opportunities for policy action. It is really, really important that national policies being drafted, and Ghana is in the process of finalizing their national fisheries policy. I remember when the conversation started, they reached out to FAO to say, can you help us with the process? How can we make it a lot more gender responsive? Gender-sensitive data collection, data that we collect at fish landing site, data that we collect in the sector needs to be genderized. It has to capture sex and gender disaggregated data. That is how we make the decisions. If we do not know the number of women in the sector, if we do not know how much money, what's the income from the fisheries, fish processing they get, how then do we make decisions? It is also important that we invest in safe and climate resilient infrastructure for women, and then strengthen their networks and leadership. There's been a lot of capacity development initiatives that I'm engaged in, that they bring these national chapter women to build their capacity on processing, on business development, on financing, just as a way to help them improve on their business operations. So, role of government and partners. For government, support and enact legal and policy reforms. Regional organizations like ECOWAS, we need to coordinate and monitor implementations. Donors, we need to put money towards women-focused small-scale fisheries initiatives. And then for academia and CSOs, we need to produce evidence and build awareness. If we engenderize the fishery sector, it can reduce the impact of IUU fishing. Engaging women also enhances community surveillance and compliance. There was a project that I was involved, Glow Later. Women were put in place, to report these illegal activities. They shared through their networks, and that information was recorded nationally. And then, in terms of impact, gender-responsive and small-scale implementation helps to provide stronger governance against IUU. Now, recommendations from FAO's regional engagement. To promote inclusive multi-stakeholder dialogues, to enhance women's visibility through sex-disaggregated data, use small-scale fisheries guidelines as entry points for broader gender equality in coastal livelihoods, and also leverage FAO tools. We have a number of resources and have a number of guides that can help in the work we do at community level, at country level, at national level, regional level. Key takeaways, and this is my conclusion and my last slide. The small-scale guidelines for the sector is a powerful tool to empower women in the sector. And then also, regional actions must be put in place to address the structural and cultural barriers. Dr. Ife talked about a lot of these cultural dynamics. Yes, if you are at the regional level, you might think, okay, I've not seen this. But when you go to the community, you hear the stories that women tell, and then you are impressed. The Tuesday not going to see is cultural, because you go, you would see Mame Water. If you go to the farm, you see the land goddess. That is the base. Yes, putting the scientific view alongside it, it was a way for the human body to rest. It was the way for the land to follow. It was the way to, give some day off. Traditionally, they had to find a way to scare people from doing these activities. There were even reports where people had gone to farms and gone to sea and seen these purported idols and goddesses. But it has, if you look at it from the scientific point of view, the intellectual point of view, you realize that these were initiatives put in place to protect the natural resource. Gender transformative approaches. It is really key to change the behavioral approach, the behavioral mindset of key stakeholders, just as a way of bringing everybody to the table and achieving a gender-sensitive, gender-responsive food systems transformation that we are looking towards. And then we believe in FAO that gender equality is integral to food systems, its resilience, and the legality of it. Thank you very much.